Tricks. Accent and confidence. After observing people from different countries and meeting and talking to others, I arrived at the conclusion that confidence is half the trick, and confidence is related to your pronunciation and accent. If you can achieve a decent accent, people will assume that you speak very well. I get compliments by only saying, "Hello, how are you?" in my languages, despite having learned the language in a very short time, because I really care about my accent. I actually love trying to imitate native accents in a foreign language. On the other hand, there are people who know a great deal of vocabulary. The content of their speech is fabulous, but their pronunciation is bad, and they seem as if they are beginners. Well, what I'm trying to say is that good pronunciation and accent gives you a sense of confidence. For one, you are less likely to care about your mistakes if you know that you have a decent accent, especially because focusing on your accent prevents you from overthinking your mistakes and gives you a sense of confidence. Secondly, having the courage to try accents or try to imitate natives perfectly is a great asset in language learning and getting you out of your comfort zone. It will also turn language learning into a fun activity, like a game. You know how people love imitating British or Australian accents because it's fun? Establishing a good accent in your new language can be just as fun. Phrases. Phrases are what make conversation flow, not the individual words. So learning phrases will do wonders for your language. We always use a lot of phrases when we talk in our native language. It is more natural this way. Learning words help, but phrases teach you how to say the right thing at the right time. It is one of my favorite learning activities. It's quite fun. Also, you can't always predict phrases based on the individual words. You need to learn them because they have their own meaning. Some advice I received from a large number of polyglots is, don't learn individual words, learn phrases, and learn the words in their contexts. So learn sentences and phrases, not individual words, because each language has its own unique way of saying things. If you want to sound natural and understand others, phrases are crucial. Filler phrases. Fillers probably have a bad reputation in your native tongue, but they can be useful in your second language. If you have a set of filler phrases to use in your conversations, it will give you time to think about the actual words you want to say and help the conversation flow better in the earlier stages of learning. This can give you a certain feeling of fluency even in your first weeks of learning a language. This can come off as a little robotic, but it's worth knowing in case you get stuck. Examples of filler phrases you can insert into your conversations. That is a good question. As far as I know, well, as a matter of fact, all joking aside, by the way, in my opinion, I don't have a big interest in that. As you may know, if I remember correctly, I haven't thought about it before. Just kidding. When we learn a language, we tend to focus on the formal language and ignore the informal aspects of it. But what people speak most of the time is informal language. So I want to talk about how you can use colloquialisms in your learning journey. Colloquialism. Colloquialism could be anything from local slang in the language and colloquial phrases to particular gestures. For example, in French, the standard way to ask someone, "How are you?" is to ask, "Ça va?" Even though this is a casual way, people will also ask you, "Ça roule?" which is a colloquial way of asking, "How are you?" So when you see your French friend next time, instead of asking, "Ça va?" ask her, "Ça roule?" Let me tell you another example. The French word for clothes is vêtements, but the word fringue is also very common. You can hear it in TV shows quite often, so you might as well use it. Particular to Italian is a gesture you can make where you place your index finger in the middle of your cheek and turn it back and forth like a key while saying buono, depending on what type of food you're referring to. In Spanish, people address others differently depending on the country they are from. An example of this is the word bro in Spanish, as in "what's up, bro?" is quite different depending on where you say it. So to say buddy or bro, you would say tío in Spain, pana in Mexico and Ecuador, bonco in Cuba, mano in Guatemala and Bolivia, and lastly, che in Argentina. And they have different sayings and phrases unique to their own country. You can always use them to break the ice. I love them. They are so much fun to learn and use. Also, using a colloquial expression makes you sound like a native speaker. Language learners are actors. When we speak foreign languages, we are all acting. We are all actors to a certain extent. Changing your brain patterns, changing your speech, your accent, your reactions, words, and even voice and gestures are all a part of acting. So the better you can act, the better you can do these things, and the better you will be as a language learner. Those who can successfully step into this new identity are the best and are the most proficient language learners. Why and how this happens, and how can you be a better actor? Let me tell you some aspects of acting that you can use in your language learning journey. Confidence. Actors need to be able to be the character they are portraying without worrying about what people think, and as language learners, if you think of yourself as a character or actor, you are going to be surprised how well you speak. If you think of yourself as an actor when you are practicing the language, you are going to be more comfortable because your brain and ego will realize the fact that this is not the real you. It's just an actor who is going to make his way through the new language. As a result, you are going to be more confident even if you have just started language learning. Fake it till you make it. Emotions. How do actors learn a huge number of lines perfectly? Because they are receptive to the emotion and context behind those lines. They feel the emotions while practicing their lines, like actors. We learn the best when emotions are involved. A great example of this is how we learn words in our interactions with people very quickly. We just hear it once while interacting with some person and then it sticks to our mind, because language learning happens for real when people and emotions are involved. Acting exercise. It is also so much fun to think of language learning as acting. Shadowing exercises will come as a recreational activity instead of studying. I'm going to tell you a fun learning method relating to acting that is used by the best simultaneous translators in the world. It is super simple, but a lot of fun. Just get a video clip, preferably a speech or monologue. Something in video format so you can see the emotions, like a movie clip or an important talk. And then find the script or transcribe it. What you do is try to imitate the speaker as good as you can, including their gestures and their facial expressions. Think of yourself as an actor and try to have the emotions they are trying to transmit to the audience. There is a British polyglot who invented an alter ego in Russian, and he has a YouTube channel for that alter ego where he teaches Russian. He even speaks with a Russian accent in English as the character. Check out Viktor Huliganov on YouTube. Also, he assimilates himself in Russian culture in the videos because it is difficult to communicate in Russian if you don't know about Russian culture. What this polyglot does might seem like an extreme, but you have to have some grasp of the culture to fully understand the language. Communication routines. Here is a true language learning hack that is going to help you be fluent in a very short time. In speaking, there are certain ways to say certain things. Natives almost always say those things in the same way, so you don't produce anything new, you just say what you've heard before. And people most of the time will talk about the same things in the same way. In small talk, there is some variety of topics to talk about. And when you learn a new language, most of the time, you talk to people you are just meeting for the first time. When you are just meeting, the conversation topics are limited, because you aren't familiar with each other. Some examples of these questions are, what do you do for work? Why are you learning the language? How long have you been learning it? Have you been to blah blah? Do you travel a lot? Your hometown, your school, your job. You go through all the same routines. So if you prepare these routines beforehand, you can be conversationally fluent for the most part in a very short time. But to do this, you need to be on a conversational roll. Being on a roll means leading the conversation. You need to lead the conversation because it's hard to be on a roll when you are not the one steering the wheel. You can try to do this by being first to introduce new topics and questions to the conversation. Don't think of this as selfish or robotic because most people won't talk to you about interesting stuff unless you start it or you encourage them to. I learned this in my experiments meeting tons of people every day practicing my French and Spanish in those countries. I was surprised by how we have the almost exact same conversations with a lot of people. And I saw that this is the case in so many interactions unless I get the conversation role and move it to other directions different than the default. Otherwise, all of those conversations were almost identical to each other. While it is true that you can rely on this until your relationship with the natives improves and enables you to have deeper conversations, you can still get so much communication done with it until then. And I have prepared a list of routines you are going to have in most of your conversations at the beginning of your learning journey. You can find them in the appendix. Prepare the questions and your personal answers in your target language. You can have a native to translate it for you in your target language, and then memorize them and understand the wording, patterns, and structures of each sentence. Practice them as if you were acting out a scene from a play, but don't aim for perfection. You are going to perfect them when you are practicing with native speakers.